Hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us for the WAG pod today. We have
Yeah,
Jill Hanson of Ride for Paws Rescue and Transport. I get the name right?
you did.
That's what, that's research behind the scenes. So you're living in Indiana, but you do a lot of your work in LA and California. Is that right?
Yes.
So, do you want to talk a little about how you, maybe the first time you started getting involved with transporting dogs?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been rescuing for a couple of years, just on a very small local basis. Aussies mostly. But I happened to come across a post on Facebook. I don't know how it ended up in my feed,
It's the
but it was,
algorithm.
I guess, seeking out the crazy dog ladies. But I saw a post about two twin husky boys that
Yeah,
were due to be euthanized in LA, and I'm looking at these two beautiful, healthy dogs, and I'm thinking, what? How can that even
yeah,
happen? Like, what? So I started making some phone calls, and soon found out the state of kind of chaos and just overwhelming amount of dogs that are in the shelter being put down daily
sure.
out there.
Yeah,
Um, and so I was trying to make connections with local rescues to pull for me and put them on transport to bring them to me. And it just wasn't clicking fast enough.
right.
And these dogs were set to die. And I was like, I looked at my boys on a Monday night and I was like, okay, kids, like mom's going to LA. And they're like, wait, what? I jumped in my car at like 9 o'clock. I drove
Yeah,
to my closest Tractor Supply, filled my car with crates, and off I went. And it's kind of been a slippery slope of more dogs ever since.
right. And it just started from there.
It
Interesting.
did,
And
yeah.
so, you had worked, you remember we had talked, you'd worked as a paralegal for about 10 years
Hmm.
before, and then you started doing this full time pretty recently, right?
Yeah, last summer.
Nice. How was
Yeah.
that transition and kind of what made you go from the corporate life to kind of doing your own thing?
Yeah, I mean it definitely had its pros and cons. It was a lot of physical work,
Yeah.
whereas before it was mostly, I was using my brain and my fingers to type,
Sure.
and
Well,
that,
you're still using your brain now, I'd like to think,
I
right?
am, but it's different.
Yeah.
And it's very physical, it's very demanding. And I'm on the road a lot. I've missed my family, I missed my
Yeah,
dogs. It was a huge change for everyone.
definitely.
So but we kind of talked about it, and the kids were like, okay, like, and my kids are older.
Yeah.
They're adults, and then I have one that's 17. So
Right.
it was kind of like, well, it's a risk, but
Exactly. And
let's
it
do
was
it.
at the yeah, and it was at that time you felt you could kind of start getting back into doing a little bit more work or switching something up, right?
Right.
When your kids kind of hit that age.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just time. Like, my job was in the corporate world, and it was wearing on me physically,
Ooh,
mentally,
corporate.
emotionally. Yeah, it was like, no offense to anyone that works in corporate. It's,
Right, right.
there's some great
No.
jobs out there, but
Sure.
it wasn't clicking for me, and I
Yeah.
just felt this tug, on my heartstrings, that I was
Yeah.
I was in the wrong place.
Right.
And so it kind of just eased over into me pulling and having dogs transported to me, and I'm paying you know a hefty price tag every time, and it's coming out of
Definitely.
my pocket, for
Yeah.
these dogs to be transported to me, and I'm thinking, I could do this.
Right.
Why am I paying somebody else to do this? Like,
Right.
why can't I do this?
So you had started by having someone transport the
Mm-hmm.
dogs to you for a little
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I made connections through a local rescue that I work with out there.
Hmm.
And he was great. He did a
Sure.
great job with all my dogs.
Sure.
Um,
But I mean, it costs money at the end of the
it
day,
was, yeah, it was very expensive.
right?
And again, I wasn't a 501(c)(3). I didn't have donations. I had to stop doing my fingernails. I had to stop doing my hair. I had to give up
Yeah.
fancy makeup and purses,
Right.
and it was just
Right.
like all worth it. But, I was like, I got to change something up.
Yeah.
And so I started out by renting a big cargo van and
Yeah.
kind of doing some research, and I was like, okay, well, if this is meant to be, let's give it a whirl.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a couple of months, and I
Hmm.
was like, okay, I think I can do this, and took the plunge and bought my first van. So
Yeah. So was there a little bit of like DIY involved in the van and you had to kind of get it all? Like what was that process for you?
It was kind of like Tetris,
Yeah.
it's like great that I was a 90s kid and remember that and trying to figure out how to
Sure.
maximize the space. And I don't ever leave my dogs when I'm on
Right.
transport. Like once I load those dogs up there, I consider them my dogs.
Right.
I care for them just like I would my own. And
Yeah.
so I want them to be safe. I want them to be secure. And so it was a lot of just and I had a good friend that was helping me at the time and loading crates in and ratcheting them down and tugging and pulling and making sure everything was secure. And yeah, and then it was just kind of like trial and error and seeing what crates worked better. And
Right.
so but safety was definitely the top
That's your top
concern.
priority,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's what, 2.5 days? Is that right? Of travel pretty much from Indiana to LA?
Yeah, that's like the devil's on my heels kind of travel. Ideally, I can take things a little slower, but sometimes that's not
Sure.
possible.
Sure.
If you've got somebody that's set to be euthanized, you could just gotta go.
You gotta, yeah, you gotta get
Luckily,
it
I've
done.
made some really good friends out there, and they can help me pull now, and local
Sure.
transporters that do a great job getting my dogs to boarding, and
Right.
so it's a little less hectic than it used to be, but
Yeah. But it's still hectic and still
it is,
it would
yeah.
fall apart without a Jill for sure.
I have a really, really good team behind me.
Yeah.
I've made some awesome friends, very smart people you know, that know the ins and outs of the shelters and have connected me with other people. And it's just the dog community, man. It's great,
It's awesome.
great people.
And there's a lot of niches, and you know what I mean? There's like rescues, and then there's like people who want to work on new products, and then there's raw feeding. And,
Hmm.
I think within the grander community, there's always somewhere you can feel like you can really fit in. And there are people
Hmm.
who kind of align with what you want to do, which is very cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're traveling, the on your way back, are you driving? You're not driving straight for 3 days, are you like stopping and like,
Hmm.
do you usually have someone with you?
Nope, I'm solo.
Yes, you.
Yep, I'm a solo traveler. And everyone's always like, "You what?"
I know that's because how many dogs are in the van usually with you?
I
Bus.
think the most I've transported at a time was 17.
Oh
I
my goodness.
yeah, I had 17 and they were all huskies.
Yeah.
And they were going to be euthanized because
Yeah.
some of them had been exposed to parvo, some had parvo. We worked really hard to save those dogs and get
Yeah.
them to a
What
place
is
that.
parvo again? I've heard that before, but
So basically, they vomit and diarrhea, and it's
not
fatal.
good.
It's not good. Without
Yeah.
treatment, it's fatal,
Sure.
especially for puppies.
Yeah.
So
So were these
we
puppies that you were
some
transporting?
of them, yeah, some of them were young puppies. Some were. It was basically, a backyard breeder
Yeah.
had all these huskies, and they started getting parvo, and so they dumped them at the shelter. So it was somebody else's problem, and my team caught wind of it, and we found a rescue out in Virginia. Wonderful, wonderful lady. Shout
Yeah.
out to Kelly.
Yeah.
Um,
Shout out Kelly for sure.
Kelly, yes, she saved the day. We found a clinic out there that would accept parvo dogs, and we got them, the right shots.
Wow.
We got the right people in to donate money, and we saved all 17. But
That is amazing.
that was a 3.5 day trip across the country from
Oh
LA
yeah.
to the very edge of Virginia.
Of
So it
course.
was,
And you had to start in Indiana before all that, right? Like you had to
yeah.
go. So what is that? I guess, what does that kind of look like? Are you have to like book a hotel at night or do you sleep
No,
in?
I sleep on the van. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I would guess that you have to with all those dogs
Yeah.
to take care of,
Yeah.
right?
I don't think hotels would smile on me for dragging in
Right, with all those
17
dogs like
huskies.
barking out there. Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess that was a bit of a silly question, but I was hoping there was some glamour involved.
There is no glamour involved at all. There is,
Right.
it's kind of like, I'm an outdoors girl. I love camping. And
Sure.
I think that kind of works in my favor because,
Mhm.
you do without a lot of things when you backpack and that sort
Yeah.
of thing. And for months, I slept on a literal baby mattress, like a crib mattress, because
Wow.
that's what fit in my van.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've since upgraded to, a foam mattress that's a little bit more
Nice.
comfortable.
That's
So
that's a pretty, yeah. I mean, you're high rolling now,
sleep is very important on those
Yeah.
trips. So, and like I said, I don't leave my dogs other than to, run into a gas station or something like
Sure.
that. Those dogs are watched very carefully 24/7. So
Definitely. So, you talked a little bit about your team and kind of the community. Is there anyone that you've kind of worked with that you feel like just consistently time and time again they're kind of seeing the same cause as you and have made an impact in your rescue bus?
oh yeah, Heidi Hatfield, huge shout out to that girl.
Shout out to Heidi as
She's
well.
yeah, shout out to Heidi. She's one of my local people. She's helped me a ton. Marie Mitchell really kind of helped get my feet wet.
Yeah.
Um, and then, while I wasn't on the road, when I was still at home, I was kind of the last resort for dogs that didn't have anywhere else to go. And she'd
Right.
call me and she'd say, Jill,
Because you have how
so
many in your house right now?
18.
18.
18, yeah. And like I said, rescue's a slippery slope. Like
Yeah.
you take in a few and I just it's hard to say no when there's a dog's life on the line and nobody else is stepping up. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, we'll make room for one more.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are worse slippery slopes to end up on. You know,
That's what I tell my kids. It's not math, it's fine.
right? It's not math. It's dog rescuing. It's totally
Right,
fine.
right.
So, the dogs in your house, the 18 of them. I know we had talked a little bit. I think we'd mentioned eventually you want to move to a place with a little bit more land.
Yep. Yep. So
Where
the house
where
is
is that?
currently,
Yeah,
yeah, we've got the house on the market. We're currently looking for
nice.
a property with land.
It was
Started
number
invest
18. 17, you're like, it's fine. 18, you're like, all right, it's
that was
fine.
the one that just pushed us over
Yeah.
the edge. No.
This is the straw on the camel's back.
So no, I met a wonderful, wonderful man back in October. I kind of set up my life to be a single girl because who wants to
Yeah.
date somebody that's got, dogs coming out of every corner of the
Yeah.
house.
Hey,
So
that guy does. The guy that you
he
met,
does. And
right?
shout out to Josh. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And he's really, been a huge supporter. And has always been there anytime I needed things, anytime I needed new kennels installed. He's been my handyman
Yeah.
so he's jumped on board. And we're looking for some country property and already starting to invest in some outdoor kennels so we can
Nice.
really start, once we land in the property, I can start taking in more dogs.
Yeah.
Because rescue and rehab is really my heart.
Yeah.
That's what I love to do.
Right.
And I've taken in multiple dogs that have been used as bait dogs and, been really traumatized and need help coming out of that. And that's, I think, where I shine.
Sure.
I have a heart for that. So
Yeah. And where did you kind of realize, like, when did you first realize, like, hey, this is something that I'm really interested in doing? Or like, I'm sure you grew up having some dogs and like,
mhm.
that kind of thing, but that's a pretty big pivot, right? To go
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm gonna drive for 2.5 days and sleep on a baby mattress, right?
I certainly didn't grow up thinking that would be my lifestyle.
Right.
It was probably during COVID, actually.
Hmm.
We had two dogs for the longest time. And my youngest son had been begging for a puppy for years. And I'm like, it's not the right time. It's not the right time. And I was in school and I was working a couple of jobs. And,
Yeah.
it just, but 2019 Christmas time, I was like, okay, I think I can swing it.
Yeah.
And so I added another Aussie, and then we added another Aussie, and then we added another Aussie. And then COVID hit. And it was like all we had was time.
Yeah.
And we spent our days because I had a job that I was blessed that I could work from home and
Hmm.
answer the calls and that sort of thing. So the extra time we filled with training. We
Yeah.
trained and trained and trained our dogs, and I really was like, oh my gosh, this is really rewarding. Like
Yeah.
teaching them, tricks and how to behave and
Sure. And,
um,
and was this, the training itself self-taught, by you?
mhm.
You just kind of figured it out as you went?
Yeah, yeah. And it was kind of like picking and choosing between, I used a lot of Caesar. Everyone's familiar with Caesar Milan. I used a few of his techniques. I'd get
Yeah.
on
The
YouTube,
dog
watch.
whisperer.
Yeah, exactly. And there are things that work. But what I realized over the years is there's no cookie cutter approach to training
Sure.
dogs. Every dog's different. They're just like kids. You can't raise kids, the same.
Right.
And so you have to be flexible. You have to really learn how to get in tune with their personalities, their background, what they need, what their triggers are.
Right.
And once you kind of unlock that, then you can tailor the training to the
Right.
dog and really help them shine.
Exactly. And so you had already kind of been building your own toolkit by the time you started doing the rescue and rehab
Yeah.
process,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
rehab is, probably one of the most important parts about it, right? Because you can't
Mm-hmm.
just save these dogs and bring them and just drop them somewhere, right? Because they're
Exactly.
back in the same kind of boat that they were first in, right? They may not
Yeah.
have parvo anymore, but they're back in the same boat.
Exactly. And I guess that's where we wanted to maybe change it up a little bit.
Hmm.
Let's give these dogs a reason to stick in a home. A lot of people aren't, and I don't blame them. It's a lot of work. Not everyone's equipped to deal with a traumatized dog. They don't
Sure.
have, like you said, that in their toolkit.
Yeah.
So what we were doing was finding the dogs that were in need. And helping them come out of that, kind of dark place that they were in, and
Sure.
really turn into an amazing companion. And then
Right.
we can look for the home that works best for them. And we're very
Exactly.
choosy with
Yeah.
where our dogs are placed.
As he should be, right?
Yeah, yeah. So they stay with me until they find the perfect home, and if it doesn't work out, they come back to me. There's
Yeah.
no dropping off at the shelter or anything like that.
So you
So
stay fairly involved throughout
yeah, I do.
the process.
I get updates all the time. And that's one of the happiest things. Like when people send me video, and I just got a video from the other day from a lovely lady in British Columbia. She adopted a Doberman mix that we had pulled, and
Yeah.
man, that dog is living the life.
Yeah.
On all kinds of acreage. Just I get videos of her playing fetch and like hiking and at the
Yeah.
lake, and it's like this. This is why I do what I do.
Yeah. Definitely. So, I guess what's interesting as well, for me hearing your story is that, you go all the way to LA, right? And I guess that being a big cultural hub and a bit, a lot of like wealth there, but also a lot of, poverty,
Hmm.
that ends up being kind of a hot spot for dogs that are neglected or,
Yeah.
in that area. Have you considered like, is there a need for, other states, other places like Indiana close to
Oh
you?
yeah.
Um, and kind of what makes you, because I mean, regardless at the end of the day, you can't do it all, right?
Right. Right.
But what makes you want to stick to LA versus kind of, trying out new places and doing, that kind of thing?
Hmm. So I'm pretty well connected in LA for one thing. Like that's really the key.
Yeah.
Anywhere that you're dealing with shelters, and you've got to find rescues that are willing to help.
Yeah. That's not
Local
usually
people.
what people think when they say I'm well connected in LA. Usually, it's a
Yeah,
little,
it's not the glamorous kind of
it's
connected,
not, yeah, yeah.
but still connected with really amazing people out there
Sure.
doing
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
amazing things. Um, but I've pulled dogs from all over. In fact, I have a beagle from South Carolina that he's never leaving because we love him to
Yeah.
pieces.
Yeah, of course.
And I've pulled dogs out of a Georgia shelter, and
Hmm.
it's really just where I can find the need, and I'm in the right place at the right time.
Sure.
So and having an adopter willing to step up, like at this point, I've exhausted all my funds.
Yeah.
At this point, it's if the dogs aren't backed with an adopter on standby or a foster, I'm kind of, my hands are tied until
Sure.
I have 5 in boarding right now that I'm paying for.
Right.
So I've got to get these dogs adopted before I can continue to help. But
Yeah.
absolutely, I am super open to expanding to different states. So if anybody listening is connected in other states and needs help, definitely give me a shout. I would
Yeah.
love to help wherever I can.
Sure. So are you, is the bus, I'm guessing it's an LLC, right? or something of that sort?
It's sole owner, yeah,
So,
whatever it's called, sole
sole
proprietorship.
proprietorship.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay. I do the same. Yeah, that's what
yeah.
Works is as well. And are you kind of seeking the 501(c)(3), or is that
Hmm.
something that you've already, gotten started?
Yep. So I've opened the file and what did we decide? It was like 60 some pages or something
Yeah.
like
Oh,
that,
yeah. It's
something
like
crazy.
26. Yeah, it's insane. And you open it, you're like, let's,
Yep,
it's
yep.
fine.
And so I'm like, okay, that's another day.
Yeah.
And May has just been a crazy, crazy month.
Yeah.
I've got a kiddo that's graduating and it's been
Yeah.
something, with that. So I haven't had a ton of time
Yeah.
lately to put into it. But yes, that is next on my list of things to do to get my
Sure.
501 C3 established.
Sure.
Also looking at getting to be a PATA registered, which will let me travel more internationally with dogs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so always looking for ways to expand and
Yeah. I
mhm.
think oftentimes like there are things that on the front end take a lot of time, but then like when you actually get them done, you kind of reap a lot of benefits
Yeah,
later down. Like I think
yeah,
the whole, and I am no expert on any of this stuff, but I think having, donations be tax deductible is unfortunately you'd hope that people just donate and give money because they want to, but
yeah,
I think that's a really, really big, kicker for people where they're like,
yeah,
hey, if I'm going to donate to this and then I'm able to kind of withdraw it, because everyone's got their own finances to manage.
right, right,
Exactly. So,
yeah,
you know, and you're also, is it USDA?
yep. So I'm
What is,
USDA.
yeah, what does that mean?
So there's certain rules that, while you're transporting animals, live animals, livestock, anything like that, there are rules and regulations set forth by the USDA.
Right.
So you have to go through and read and familiarize yourself with their procedures and making sure that you're following those. So if you get stopped, they're not like wagging their finger at you and
Yeah.
so, but yeah, so that's also something that's important to people when
Oh,
they're
definitely.
searching out transport,
So
to
then
make
it's not
sure that
like another
you're
kind of like backyard breeding situation into a backyard
exactly.
transporting situation.
Exactly. You want somebody that's following health standards and, that sort of thing. And that's something that's huge, for me too. Like it's not just about, physical safety on the van. It's,
Mhm.
making sure things clean and
Yeah.
bleached down. And especially when there's puppies on board, it's just, it's like I said, it's very physically demanding.
Oh,
And,
I'm sure. Yeah.
but that's, yeah, you want somebody that's going to be very careful with your
Yeah.
dog in every aspect. So, and that USDA certification is something
Right.
that you should look for.
Definitely. Do you think at some point you will kind of have someone going on these trips with you or kind of making the bus bigger? Is there kind of, is that kind of in the cards?
Yeah, we've talked about it. I've definitely had people reach out and ask, hey, are you hiring? And right now, no, I'm not. Like this is still very small. I'm still kind
Sure.
of getting things figured out
Yeah.
and I was out for 4 months,
Yeah, you had mentioned that.
yeah, so that kind of took me off the grid for a bit. So I feel like um I stepped back in, I think around March,
Hmm.
um and went to Hawaii, which was a great way to towed it back into
Nothing wrong with Hawaii.
transport.
Yeah.
So but I'm really just now getting started back on. I had to have ACL surgery, and
Yeah.
so I had to recover from that, and but yeah, so hopefully yes, hopefully
Right.
I'll add a few drivers where I can be at home more, and
Right.
so. But I'm also type A personality, and
You want it
I
done a
I
specific
I
way.
have a specific way that I like things, and it's like finding somebody that you trust on that level because it's your name, it's your brand, it's your
Right.
what you're creating, and finding somebody that you trust with that. That's
Oh, definitely.
that's a big deal.
It
So
is. And I mean, if you're going to be picky about, the people who you give the dogs to, you're definitely going to be picky about people who are going to, drive a bus with, y'all's brand on it.
exactly, exactly. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the dogs and keeping them safe and well cared for.
Yeah, I think that kind of keeps you grounded. You know,
Yeah.
you can look down like right now and you have a dog right there and you're like, this is
There's actually like 4 or 5, and one of them is smacking a toy around, being as loud as he can
yeah.
possibly be.
I wish that that was happening in my house right now. I don't have my own dog right now.
We're gonna get you hooked up one of these
Oh
days,
yeah,
whenever you're
that's
ready.
right. That's right. I need to get a little more financially stable first. At least fill out this 501(c)(3) while I have time, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, how has it been in that transition from, going full time? Has that, is this because it sounds like, from an outsider's perspective, this is something that you're sinking a lot of your money into, but at the same time, you have connections in the sense of people who are willing to donate and help out. So how do you kind of manage the financial side of things?
I bleed a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, I hate saying no, and I've had to learn to say no,
Yeah.
when I just can't help anymore. If I have to commit to the dogs that I've already pulled and I have here at home, and I'm not good at saying no.
Mhm.
And that's been hard, but that's definitely one way that you have to be smart. I can't bankrupt myself trying to
Yeah.
to save dogs. It's yeah, it's a fine line that you have to walk. um but yeah.
Something you just kind of have to learn how to do.
Yeah, it's not anything that, like, I've had a business before. Years and years ago, I had my own cake business.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, yeah, just trying all kinds of things, seeing what sticks.
Entrepreneurial.
But so I was, familiar with how to run a business. But it's that managing of making money, and then also,
Right.
because we have to eat. I have to feed my dogs, and
Right. You got to pay for gas. You got to
right,
pay for
right.
medication stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then
So
18 dogs, that is not cheap
it
to,
isn't.
that's
It
probably the
is not.
opposite of cheap. It's
Right.
probably very expensive.
I've given a lot of things up,
Yeah.
but it's worth it. They're
Right.
they're happy, they're healthy, they're
Yeah.
thriving, and that's what matters to
Yeah.
me. And it's not a lifestyle for everybody.
Sure.
It's hairy, and there's usually bodily fluids of every sort and variety
All over
throughout the
everywhere.
day, but
Yeah.
that's where my love is.
Yeah. So how, I know you mentioned that your kids are a little older and your youngest is 17, but how is
Mhm.
it managing like the family dynamic? Are they pretty much like, hey, we're gonna help you out with all these dogs here, or like, or are they kind of like, all right, I never want to get a dog myself at this point.
It's a mix of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, my oldest was like, he just got his own apartment.
Yeah.
He's moved back a few times,
Sure.
when you're young. And he just set out on his own again. And I asked him, I was like, how do you like your apartment? And he's like, I love it, it's quiet. So
Yeah.
he's definitely, I'm sure at some point, he'll get a dog. But
Yeah, down the line a little
right
bit.
now he's just enjoying the peace and quiet, which is
Yeah.
not anything that my dogs are being right now. They're being so loud.
Nah, it's all
But my
good.
youngest,
I think there's a train going in the background earlier, so it's fine. That's how it
um,
goes.
my youngest has been a huge help.
Yeah.
He really, while I was on the road, that was his job. I paid him if he went and worked at McDonald's, he
Yeah.
got a paycheck
Yeah, of
for
course.
feeding dogs, washing dogs, all the scooping of poop that
Right.
18 dogs require. And he's done a great job. But
Definitely.
yeah, I think he's ready to move on to something else. And
Sure.
so we're definitely going to be looking for a trusted person to bring in,
Right.
to work with us at the kennel.
Definitely.
Because eventually we'll want to take a vacation sometime. So we're gonna have to
I
have
think the
trusted
key is
people in place.
like finding dogs to rescue or deliver to in vacation-oriented areas like Hawaii,
Yeah,
for
we
example.
yeah we did that, and we had a trip to Barbados. So I took dogs that
Yep.
were
I
the
saw that
couple
on
was
your Instagram.
yeah the couple was moving from Washington to Barbados.
Yeah.
And um that I was like, yeah, let's
You're like,
let's
yeah,
do
that's
it.
fine.
That sounds
Absolutely.
great.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, that's definitely one of those pros that come along
Oh
with the
yeah.
with the job. I've seen a lot of really cool places in the country, places that I may never have seen otherwise, and
Right.
have fallen in love with the Northwest coast. Like, oh my goodness,
Oh
Washington,
yeah.
Oregon, like has my heart.
Gorgeous
But
areas.
yeah, yeah, that's been such a huge blessing just to be able to see more of the country
Yeah.
and explore. Um, so yeah.
So I know we were talking about filming the episode and everything we do, and you it sounds like you have a trip coming up. Is that right?
Yeah, so I have a trip going out to LA starting next week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna go check on.
What are the details behind that? Is there, is it specific breed or just kind of like who are you working with?
So I need to go out and check on the dogs that I have currently in boarding and kind of assess if they need to come back to Indiana. Currently looking for fosters and adopters for those five.
Yeah.
I also have a Dobie mix that we pulled from death row, and she's getting a new home in Connecticut, so she gets to go meet her new mommy, which
Nice.
we're very excited about.
Are you going to be going to Connecticut then?
Yep, yep. So it's gonna.
That's gonna be a bit of a drive right
Yeah.
there from
So
LA.
honestly, every time I'm out on the road, I'm usually gone for about 2 weeks, and I
Yeah.
average anywhere from 10 to 15,000 miles. So it's
Oh man.
me and my van guy are good friends.
Yeah, I am sure there's
Yeah.
constant breakdowns of different stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, fortunately, I've never had any breakdowns or anything. I mean, obviously, the huge accident that I was in
Yeah.
was kind of a big deal, but
Oh, of course. That wasn't on
otherwise,
you, so it's just frustrating that it kind of put you behind and
yeah, yeah, it really was. It was kind of, I felt like I was really starting to hit my stride and getting in a good groove. And man, life just sometimes has other plans.
yeah,
So,
it's kind of how it goes.
yeah.
So when you get to LA, do you have everything kind of do you have an itinerary of like, hey, first
Hmm.
we're gonna go here, then we're gonna go to
Hmm.
Connecticut? Does it ever, I'm sure stuff comes up where you're like, actually, I'm gonna stop at Virginia along the way, something like that.
So usually when I post my route that I'm headed to California,
Hmm.
that's when I start filling up.
Yeah.
People start, messaging and texting and calling and, oh, hey, can you pull this dog? Oh, hey, and before I know it, I've got, a whole van full of dogs, and
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
That's
So the
the
demand
goal.
is or I guess, yeah, the demand is there for
Yeah.
it. Like it's immediate, like very quickly filled up.
Hmm.
Are these just kind of people that you've built connections with over time? Like, is that a network or like, is it on Instagram that you make those posts and then people
Some
start?
of the, yeah, Instagram, Facebook. I am starting to get connected on Nextdoor now. But yeah, a lot of it is through rescue groups or just like breed networking.
Yeah.
It started out, I was pulling mostly Huskies, and then I got connected in the Doberman world, and I started pulling a lot of Dobies, and um, it's really once people learn what you do and how you do it, and that you can actually get it done,
Yeah.
they call and call and call.
Oh, sure.
So, but yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just finding a safe place for them to land. I mean, we're not
Right.
about pulling dogs you know, just to pull them. We
Right.
want them to have a good home to go to. And so I
Yeah.
spend time, and if I don't have time, that's when I call Marie and I send her the application. Hey, can you vet this person? Can you call the references and do
Yeah.
that for me? And she's been a huge help for that.
Yeah.
Um, so, and this is one of my LA dogs here.
So cute.
So this is Tio.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it seems to be almost breed specific.
Sure.
And I've got mostly pit mixes right now,
Hmm.
which is also a new kind of area. I've not
Definitely.
really pulled many of them before.
Yeah.
So that's who I have in boarding right now that we're
Sure.
gonna need. And two are in board and train because they were a little bit rowdy. They
Right.
needed neutered, so I got them neutered. They're learning how to sit, stay, walk nicely on a leash so that they really have a good chance.
Right. Right. And so are you, is it hard to find people who want to foster or want to adopt these dogs? Because it seems like there's a big need for people who have dogs that need help. But what does the other side of the coin look like for you?
The other side of the coin is it's very expensive because I just keep paying for these dogs to be in boarding. And really, it's the first time that I've done that. And it was kind of a lesson learned that we need homes. They deserve better than to just sit in boarding. I mean, yes, they're safe. Yes, they're well fed. They're well taken care of. I have lovely, lovely people taking care of them.
Right.
But really, they thrive in homes, and that's what we
Sure.
need. So again, this is all, it's a huge learning curve. I'm
Yeah.
learning new things every day, how to do things, better, what's best for the dogs. So yeah, it can be really difficult to find
Yeah.
people willing to step up. And it's really frustrating when you get on Facebook and you get on Instagram and you see all these posts, and my on my feed is just full of, this dog needs help and this dog needs help. I have
Right.
people reach out, hey, I'm trying to rehome my dog, can you help? And it's just like, where's everyone else? It seems like there's
Right.
just small pockets of people that are willing to actually step up and open their homes. And yeah, it is hard. It is
Yeah.
hard. You have to give things up. It's not easy to just drop everything and go on vacation, or take a weekend trip, or there's just a lot of things that are required of you when you have more than one or two dogs.
Right.
But man, we need people desperately, desperately, because dogs are dying. And it's
Yeah.
not just LA. There's a huge need in Texas. Texas is overrun with dogs,
Oh yeah.
living in terrible, terrible conditions. Huge need in Arizona. And I'm sure every state, is piping up, well, we
Oh
need help
sure.
and we need help. And
Yeah.
I know New York City was kind of a mess with shelters potentially closing. And man, people stepped up. They came out and they protested, and all of a sudden the money in the budget was found to keep those shelters open. So
Yeah.
people matter.
Yeah.
People are the ones that are going to hold people accountable, for helping make these dogs, have a better life and have
Yeah.
a chance.
Definitely.
So
So, I guess besides the intrinsic like, hey, I want to protect these dogs, the motivation of like, seeing the person from British Columbia, text you videos and everything like that. How do you make sure that you take care of yourself during this? Because I know it seems like there's a lot of sacrifice in it.
yeah.
But sometimes, at least for me, I notice when I'm taking on a lot of different projects, and it's completely different, right? And I'm in a different area of work to an extent, but sometimes, when I feel overwhelmed, I have to kind of figure out like, hey, like, how am I genuinely taking care of myself other than like, hey, I see someone telling me good job or like.
Yeah.
So what does self-care kind of look like for you?
Nature. Yeah, putting my phone away, turning it on silent, and
Yeah.
taking some dogs for a hike. My boyfriend and I love to be out hiking. And if I'm on the road and if I have time, I'll find a trail, and explore, and just being outside. That is a really great way for me to recharge my battery and reset. And
That's amazing. And it's nice that you
yeah,
can do that while you're in your travels as well.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
something like, hey, I really like this coffee shop, in Indiana or wherever, and like I have to go there, but it's like, hey, this is something that I can do a little bit
Hmm.
every day or every other day where I can
Yeah.
stay grounded.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's just having that connection to the outdoors that feeds my soul for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Just, incredibly impressed and it's very inspiring to meet people such as yourself who have impacted so many, not only, dog lives, but human lives as well, right? And
Thank you.
who am I to say? But thank you so much for what you're doing, and I have no doubt in my mind that one of these days you're going to get that 501c3 done, right?
That is, as soon as
Um,
my kid graduates,
that's
that is the
right. It'll
next
happen.
project.
But whether it's, hey, we're going to, expand into some farmland and do kennels that way. Hey, let's hire a couple other people. Let's get bus going. Like, I just think the world is your oyster. And with, people such as yourself who are just inherently kind and want to give back, it's very inspiring to meet someone like you. So,
Well,
just wanted
thank
to
you.
say thank you so much for your time and sharing your story today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All right, we are less than a minute, so I'm going to hit pause, stop recording. But thanks again. Have a safe travels over the
Thank you
next
so
couple weeks.
much. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
All right.
Have a good one.
Thanks. You too.
Bye bye.